Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to INPHO Venture Summit Digital Session for this 2022 edition. I am Géraldine Andrieux. I'm the founder and the very active INPHO. So we're going to go to the next slide just to give you a bit more information about INPHO. And INPHO, it's a unique rendezvous. It's a biennial where top investors are joining every 2 years to define where to invest in deep tech. What challenge in front of us that we need to solve, and how investment can address those challenges to the tomorrow challenge. And actually, INPHO, it's already a long track record. We have welcomed more than 600 guests in the last edition with 65 speakers, more than 15 countries from Europe, US, China, Israel, Japan. And in total, more than 300 million has been raised. So people are joining to define what's next to invest when it's deal with deep tech, but also to meet with the entrepreneurs to invest in, and also to meet with corporate to build collaboration, to prepare investment strategy. And we are really looking forward actually to welcome you all in Bordeaux. Why in Bordeaux? Because you will see we have a deep program for deep tech. We are starting first with the digital session, as you can see in the next slide. And this is where we are today. So we are very pleased to invite you and to share these live sessions where top investors are joining. It's a bit of test and also a test for you of what will happen in Bordeaux. And all companies are really welcome to submit their application to meet with the investors to join Bordeaux in October. And we have right now an open call for application that will be open until the 7th of July, because in July we will have a kind of jury with investors and startups where we'll select the most interesting company that will be invited to come and pitch in Bordeaux in October the 13th and 14th. What you need also to know is that in June, end of June and up to 15th of July, we will have reverse pitching sessions where investors will pitch and they will introduce themselves. It's not always startups doing that, but also investors. And we really like this exercise because it's great also to know what investors are looking for. And today, we have these great sessions about quantum technology. What's next to invest in quantum technology? And why we have decided to address this topic is because quantum represents a lot of investment. Regis, maybe you want to comment on that.
Yes, in 2021, according to McKinsey, the total investment into quantum technology companies was in the range of $1.7 billion. It was 20 times the amount raised 5 years earlier in 2016, and twice the amount in 2020. So we see these hockey stick curves in terms of investment into quantum technology. So that's why this is a very hot topic right now in venture capital.
And today, what we want to address is beyond the technology, beyond quantum technology, what is the economic value? Why to invest? What are the use cases? What are the drivers? And we are really honored because we have around the table the top investors in quantum technology, according to us. The one we have decided early to invest in this field. So thank you very much for joining us. And we are very happy if you could share a bit more about yourself. And we will let you introduce yourself. And I think we can start maybe by Mathieu Coste from Airbus Venture. Mathieu, maybe you can share a bit more about yourself, your investment strategy.
Sure. Thank you very much, Geraldine. Thank you guys for having me today. So I'm Matt Coste, the partner for the EMEA region and the operating partner of Airbus Ventures. In 1 minute, Airbus Ventures, what is that about? We are a typical financial global early stage deep tech venture capital firm. So typical, it means we are not a corporate venture capital, despite the name we carry, the Airbus brand. It's part of our DNA, but we don't belong to Airbus. We're a typical multi-LP GP funds with investors from Japan, Europe, Airbus SE, and the US. Financially driven first. We don't have any like string attached or strategic return for any of our LPs beyond the financials. Global, we are a US-based fund registered in the Delaware, operating from our head office in Menlo Park, California, to cover Americas, from Tokyo, Japan, to cover Asia Pac, and myself living in France to cover EMEA. Early stage, we invest between seed up to Series D, so typically we write checks between $500,000 up to 10 million per round, which give us a broad range of investment possibility. And last point, deep tech. So we are thesis driven. We don't do fintech, gaming, or B2C apps for your smartphone. We very much invest in technology that we believe will disrupt one day the Z-axis, the vertical angle from ground to deep space. So it covers autonomy, connectivity, low carbon economy, space, materials, industrial efficiency, and frontier technology. And in this frontier technology cluster, we are pretty active in the field of what I call unconventional computing, where quantum is a perfect fit, but we'll come back on that later. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mathieu.
Okay, thank you very much. Jan, maybe you can follow up with Robert Bosch Venture Capital.
Thank you very much, and also happy to be here today. So my name is Jan. I'm partner with Robert Bosch Venture Capital. As the name suggests, we also are a corporate venture fund. We also have the luxury that we can do financial-driven investments, so we come with no strings attached. However, of course, it needs to be in the larger theme of what Bosch is doing, which is mainly electronics and software, and our investments are predominantly also in the deep tech space. We have currently about $1 billion under management. We have an office in Tel Aviv, in Germany, obviously, in Silicon Valley, and in China. That's about the hemisphere that we're covering, and we have about 60 portfolio companies in the moment. Quantum technologies is one of the topics that we are covering, but the way we're set up, we can look left and right of the big company a little bit. Bosch itself is not involved in manufacturing quantum computers, but there is some interest, and there are some groups dealing with those matters at Bosch, so there's a little bit of a connect.
Thank you very much, Jan. When we speak about deep tech, we speak about Christian Reitberger as well from Matterware Ventures. Christian, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my pleasure. Good evening, everybody. So firstly, thanks to the organizers of putting such a young photo of me on there. So I'm afraid all those additional wrinkles here in my face, which I couldn't Photoshop away in a live meeting, have appeared over time. So I have been around for a while in the industrial deep tech space. I'm a physicist by training, and I am running with 3 partner colleagues Matterware Ventures, which is a relatively new sounding name because we just rebranded 2 months ago. But we are a team that has worked together for many, many years in industrial technology investing on the B2V, on the Brains to Ventures platform. And after having been fed up with always having to explain what B2V means, Brains to Ventures, we decided to use a name that is less hard to explain. Matterwave it is now. We are investing out of the standard fund structure. The last one is a 100 million fund. We are now putting together a new one, which will be a bit larger. We cover everything from new materials to components to systems up to enterprise software. So a completely agnostic if it is hardware or software. And what we use as a tagline now is that we back the future of European industry with an aim to recreate European technology sovereignty, and that has various aspects: control of supply chains, control of IP, for example, in chips manufacturing and chips IP, and also a number of other resiliency aspects of industrial enterprises. We have this very large coverage domain in front of us. I am covering electronics and photonics investments, out of which quantum tech is a subset. I'm also covering resource efficiency because energy transition themes are very important to us. And lastly, I'm also covering robotics and industrial AI.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you very much. Jean-Gabriel Buonotraoni, you are principal at Quantonation. It's your turn now to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. So Quantum Nation, we're the first VC fund dedicated to quantum technologies. We are funded in 2018 at a time where it was harder to speak about quantum, especially quantum computing, which was really moonshot at this stage. We also invest in quantum sensing and communication, which are more mature fields, but we were pretty surprised because where we were created, we really believed that most of our deal flow will come from communication and sensing space due to their maturity, because most of the startups have already commercially available products. But in fact, half of our deals and our deal flow are in quantum computing space, so both hardware and software. We're a team of 4 people. As of today, we raised 85 million euros, invested in 17 companies, performed 2 exits in our portfolio, and in the team there is also a physicist that all around the table knows, Dr. Christophe Jurzac, who has a PhD in quantum physics in atoms manipulated by lasers, and that's a great asset in qualifying the companies. But we're expanding the team with another physicist that will join in September.
Very well, thank you.
And we could not speak about quantum technology without including also an entrepreneur in the discussion. I'm very pleased to welcome Philippe Bouillet. Philippe, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yes, so hi, Geraldine, Régis. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be surrounded by these prestigious investors in quantum technology and deep tech technology. So myself, as I am basically a specialist in matter waves and matter wave technology for quantum sensing. So very good, very nice name you found. I'm very happy to hear that. So I'm a CNRS research director and the director for innovation at the Institute of Optics. I founded NewQuants 10 years ago, which is one of the first company which actually put quantum sensing devices on the market, and it's still doing it almost everywhere in the world. And I'm one of the managing director of the NACIDIS Innovation Center, which aims at really pushing technology developments and technology innovation in quantum technologies from the large laboratories that we have in Nouvelle-Aquitaine.
Thank you, Philippe. And I take also the opportunity to thank the organizers, so Alpha LLH in Bordeaux and Nouvelle-Aquitaine region, the CA as well, and at Blue Morpho, we are a happy partner of this initiative. We have a rule for today. We want this session to be very interactive. So for the attendees today, don't hesitate to go either to the chat or to the question box. You can write your question here and we will do our best to answer. If we can't answer during the session because we have a lot of topic to address, we will answer later on. And you can see also on the chat some information about INPHO Venture Summit. So don't hesitate also to use it. But let's start, because we have done a lot of introduction and now maybe it's time to deep dive a bit more about the topic. So the first question will be easy. Why quantum technology? We have seen different profile. We have corporate venture, we have venture capital. You have all invested for years now in quantum technology earlier compared to a lot of funds. So the question is why? What makes you invested in this topic? And maybe we can start with Jan, because Jan, we discussed this topic working together in 2018 already, and you have made investment at that time. So maybe you can also explain your motivation and also maybe your success.
Yeah, happy to. So the VC answer part of this is that we typically monitor different technologies which are in research stage and hopefully get out of university in our lifetime. And so one of those topics that we monitored was quantum computing. And in 2018-ish, we saw that something was different. It was not the typical university thing anymore. There was money flowing into the space. And then we started to systematically really look into this. And to be said, not only quantum computing, also quantum sensing and encryption, for example. So we looked at the whole space and got really interested. The Bosch side of the answer is that, interestingly, at the time when we started to really ramp up our activities, Bosch also had a group in the early R&D department, which is quite active in quantum computing on a European level. And so basically, it was one of the lucky situations where we could also team up with them. No? What Bosch wants to get out of it is, I already said, I don't think that Bosch wants to produce a quantum computer, but the company wants to use it because it makes a couple of things hopefully a lot easier. One of the reasons is material development, superconductors, magnets, those things. Then, of course, Bosch is a big player in sensors. So also here, there is a certain interest for better sensors. And on the encryption side, well, Bosch is an IoT company, so we need to transport information. If you look into, for example, autonomous cars, you don't want anyone to hack that. So also here, that's on the horizon.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Mathieu, during the introduction of Airbus Ventures, you mentioned that you're investing on the Z-axis from ground to space. So where quantum technologies does stand in this vertical axis? Everywhere, and why quantum?
I would say everywhere. I think we'll come back on the use cases a bit later in the conversation. But first, I will echo what Jan said. We are monitoring two main things from Airbus Ventures. First, around the Z-axis, we are monitoring the pain points. And here, those engineering companies, and it's true for Boeing, Airbus, Lockheed, and others, they do consume a lot of computing power to design their platforms. Can be a satellite, helicopter, an aircraft. So aerospace is a huge consumer of computing power. On the other side, as a deep tech venture capital, we try to spend a lot of time looking at technological trends. And since the beginning of Airbus Ventures, let's say 2016, we're looking at what we call unconventional computing, meaning what will come next. We see the limit in CPU and GPUs, limit compared to the needs for aerospace and others. So by screening this world of unconventional computing, we follow basically two paths. The first one was, what about Moore's Law? Can we go deeper, just leveraging current semiconductor industry, meaning with the third layer, going smaller in the size of the chips, but we see limits here. So we're looking at the other side, which is what we call beyond more. What could come next? Obviously, quantum computing in 2016, 2017 was part of this bucket. We do have other areas like maybe chemistry-based computing. If you store your data onto DNA, can you throw proteins to have the result of a computation? So we're looking at this quantum computing field on the hardware, software, as well as quantum sensing, quantum communicating, and obviously the risk that goes with it, which is the post-quantum cryptography with the end of the RSA with the strong quantum computers. So we did our first investment in QCware, pure software company, agnostic in terms of hardware, because we believe at the time that investment required to scale, I would say, a quantum computer with high fidelity qubits would be far too expensive for us as a small venture cap. We saw the hundreds of millions of dollars invested by IBM and others. So we said, let's start with the world of software, at least to understand how this works, and to look at the use cases, to look at the customer abstraction. Because having a quantum computer is nice, but you need to use it, and you need to learn how to use it. And after this software investment, we're looking at the various tech of hardware, and we did our first investment in IonQ a couple of years later, so 2017, 2018, and you look at the way those companies are disclosing their product roadmap through regular investors call, because this company now is listed onto the NASDAQ. So you can see that quantum computer is not a theory anymore. It's not only in the lab. We can start to have concrete use cases. So from here, we scaled into the world of quantum sensing with Q Control out of Australia. Maybe you know them, Philip, doing the stack of sensing. And we even take some very early stage bet for the future of the future. The last investment is a small company out of France called C12. They want to build these quantum chips, hosting qubits into carbon nanotubes to protect them for the real world we're living in and increase the fidelity and the coherence time to allow basically computation and transformation of the data. So I don't know what will come next. Will it be chemical computing that will beat quantum? But for sure, quantum computing, hardware and software, will have a nice spot combined with CPU, GPUs that are, to me today, fully relevant for some use case, but to offer what's best for the end customers, being industrial players or being maybe even consumer tomorrow, around all the tech and the power of computing that are much quicker, and I should add, to solve problems that are not solvable in the current computing, I would say, technologies.
And this is something that you already forecasted, like 2017.
Yeah.
So you have this evolution coming.
Yeah, actually, in 17, we're convinced that the tech will go out of the lab one day. Will it be 2020, 2025?
And this is exactly what Jan you mentioned, right? So something that happens that said, okay, that's going to start going out of the lab, and there is some market drivers that were interesting at that time. And that's exactly very interesting also to discuss that, because we want to know today what are the next steps, what are the current market drivers that will make the next wave when it's deal with quantum technology. So that's very interesting to discuss that further. So keep this question for the next step as well, Mathieu.
Sure.
And I'm going to jump to Christian Reitberger, also your point of view, because we know each other for years, speaking about hardware technologies. And so what makes you invested in quantum technology on your side?
Yeah, I think it's a similar story to what Mathieu has just outlined, and also going back to Jan. We did it in a different order, but probably following a similar logic, in the sense that we are very, let's say, problem and issues driven. So what are the big problems? What are the big issues? And are there new instruments available to attack them from a different angle? So, for example, when we saw that coherent control also on a nuclear spin level was becoming more available, and optimal control technologies were being moved from the lab to real world applications, we sat down and said, in quantum sensing, which back then we deemed the lowest risk, so to speak, lowest market entry barrier applications, what could one do with this? And we stumbled upon Envision, which is using hyperpolarization technologies to radically enhance the capabilities of MRI equipment, which is out there, which has a large installed base, but which wants to get better eyes, so to speak, 1,000 times better resolution. And with coherent control, we had this additional tool in the coffer. And very similarly from our whole work in semiconductors and in photonics, where we have spent a lot of time on the bleeding edge of what is possible with very high frequency RF developments, we thought this whole quantum computing regime, when is this available on normal silicon CMOS technology? What does one have to do to get this done? And luckily, FD-SOI was developed by GlobalFoundries here in Germany, in Dresden. And we found an opening that we are now pursuing with Equal1, our investment in Ireland, which aims at manufacturing the largest error-corrected quantum computer on a chip of a size 10,000 times smaller than what the rest of the industry is pursuing with superconducting and ion trap-based quantum computing. And again, there was a new tool in the toolbox that we then employed in this company. So it's, quite frankly, in our case, it is not, oh, we discovered a completely new world and we suddenly stumbled into this enormous new space that we had never been close to. It was really the availability of new tools. Manufacturing technologies that allowed those applications.
And to address specific challenges, as you mentioned, with MRI, for example, where so you find the right solutions to tackle a big challenge, a market challenge or use case challenge. Clear. Thank you, Christian.
INPHO,
Contonation.
yeah,
Contonation.
yeah.
The name is on contonation. So the first fund on quantum technology. So maybe Jean-Gabriel, you can, you already explained it a bit when you introduced the fund, but maybe you can summarize it here, what makes you in launch actually contonation. Because I know before you was very active in the quantum technology, right? Yourself, building an ecosystems earlier before a contonation fund.
Well, yeah, it was it was not earlier, it was at the same time. We built a not-profit aiming at promoting quantum technologies back in 2018. The aim of such an association was really to help corporate startups, researchers, and investors to collaborate together. And one key point about the quantum technology side, so including computing, sensing, communications / network, is that there is still a lot of research that is done in the research labs. So some startups such as INPHO, which is one of the very few startups in the world able to live by selling quantum-based products with startups like ID Quantic, still require a large part of R&D in their own entity. And that's a key factor for such an industry. And basically the reason why we are talking about deep tech is that most of the challenges are relative to engineering, but still for the next 5 to 10 years, we will need some scientific development in order to be able to sell some products for the whole industry. And that's comparable to what happened in the Silicon Valley back in the 80s, where the first microprocessor were developed silicon-based. But we saw all the innovation since in order to be able to have such a powerful laptop or smartphone. So I think that the main point about quantum technologies as an investor is to keep being close to the academic world, where we can see innovative approaches, maybe not in the fault-tolerant paradigm as the one we see in most cases in order to be able to perform some of the most popular quantum algorithms, but maybe with some innovative approach that would leverage today's capabilities in order to accelerate specific use cases for the industry. Because it's one of the reasons why Quantonation was created is that in 2018, we first saw the first quantum computers available in the cloud since a few years, like 2 to 3 years by IBM. And that was a trigger for most of the team to realize that it's the first time since we are talking about quantum computer that we are able to leverage some quantum processing power. And scientists were doing that for themselves. That was the case of a startup we co-founded called Pascal. There we're leveraging scientific manipulation in order to simulate some exotic state of matter. And that could, and that's what have been the trigger for Quantonation, is that those kind of scientific experimentations could be leveraged to resolve some industrial problems. And in that case, leveraging neutral atom manipulated by lasers, but there are other exotic approaches in photonics. Matthew mentioned the C12 approach based on graphene nanotubes. And so there is a whole range of paradigms along with the whole range of hardwares. And pouring money into that field is also a way to discover very innovative computation approaches that might be suited for only specific use cases, but that could have a lot of value for some customers.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Philippe, we just heard about Mucos. I think you appreciate that. In fact, for you, quantum technology is not a strategy because you have really devoted your whole life to these technologies because you're a scientist first. You're an entrepreneur as well, but you also recently decided to found this center, the Nakidis Center. So could you explain us why it was important for you to create this center?
Well, maybe before explaining, I want to go back a little bit more than 10 years ago when we started MuCons, and why we started MuCons, because it's also embedded in the idea behind.
Right, of course.
So at that time, it's not only that we wanted to make a startup, but we realized that there were two potentials in the research we were doing. The first one is these quantum sensors based on cold atoms had tremendous sensitivities and performances that were unable to be achieved with anything else. So there was a potential there. But all this potential was wasted because basically we were not able to push the technology. And laboratories usually, they have a large panel of expertise, a large panel of innovation, but it's very hard to go to the next step. The valley to jump is too large for a laboratory to do. And the only way we thought we will be able to really push our technology was to start MuCons, and in MuCons do the research and technology, the research and development that you cannot actually push forward in laboratories. And that's how it worked. And as Jean-Gabriel say, it's a never-ending story. You're always doing R&D in MuCons, but you always feed MuCons with actually results from the lab that actually is increasing our capacity to deliver products. And these products are also impact also other business, like Pascal, you mentioned, it's using the laser that were initially developed for quantum sensing. So all this value chain that actually starts from basic research and high level of engineering, but not mature as a product, but mature as a function that you need for your research, and then goes all the way up to the products that can then feed new companies. And that's basically why I thought Nakedis can actually help at least the Région Nouvelle-Aquitaine to see new products emerge, or new chain of values emerge from the same approach. Like you have the research labs, they do excellent research. Sometimes you have some researchers or some PhD students who want to do some startup company, and we are actually a large panel of startup company emerging from the labs, not only in quantum but also in photonics, lasers, and etc. And but sometimes the company will only look at a market where there is much more, and especially where they could actually apply to quantum technology for the supply chain. Any type of component, any type of tiny bits of photonics components can actually make your quantum computer, tomorrow's quantum computer, different. And that's something that usually takes time, and we want to accelerate that by having everybody around the same table, and basically, and build a project where not only you think about the nice science, but you think about what is the added value to the market, how you can make a startup from it, how you can actually feed also other startup and the whole market with that. So that was the motivation for having this ecosystem building up, with science talking to industry and industry talking to science all the time, not only in a linear way.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's get more into it. We received some questions from startups. First one was from Henning Schiel, who is CEO of Patero. And the question is a company about quantum encryption. So he was saying that, does the European industry see quantum as a competitive advantage in comparison with non-EU companies? So behind this question, actually, the question behind is maybe what are the drivers for adoption of quantum technologies, and what can we do with it? And maybe first, who could answer this question about the use case? Maybe Jean-Gabriel, you could start explaining the drivers for adoption. What can we do with these quantum technologies? And do you think that European is a bit behind in terms of adoption?
Well, I think that there is a real different mentality in Europe compared to in the US, mostly based on our experience with foreign investors, meaning that we tend to have a more conservative approach in Europe, which is very valuable by demonstrating with some kind of toy models or minimum viable machine that we are able to build together something like 10 qubits in order to sell some proof of concept. And what we see in the US is that they have a longer term vision, meaning that they are willing to finance a moonshot project that might emerge in 10 years, but there is no concession on this vision, meaning that you won't develop anything that is useless to just demonstrate your ability to do so. So it's way more riskier, but it helps you to accelerate. So the biggest driver for adoption of quantum technologies in Europe, and from our experience, has been the kind of validation by the governments launching a quantum national strategy. The fact is, before that, it was seen as a matter for research, and that it had no industrial concrete application, except for some specific application in the aerospace or defense, which are like the first markets of scientific research. So the main driver for adoption has been that national quantum strategy. And secondly, it's been our ability to structure startups that were serious, followed by legitimate investors. And those startups, since they had some capital flowing in, have been able to talk to potential customer. And by building the kind of toy models I was talking about, they could demonstrate the interest of their technology and sell some collaboration to industrial customer, and explaining, once the hardware would be ready, what kind of problems they could achieve. And that's been a great trigger in order to bring on board investors and customers, which in the end will be key when in 2 to 3 years we'll bring a quantum advantage with that kind of hardware for those customers to generate revenues in the short run, because they would already be on board, and you need to do some kind of transition in the quantum space, because a classical developer cannot achieve anything on a quantum machine. So you need to have your team internally to be ready for that. And once the hardware is ready, if you just click on the switch to go for quantum-based hours of computation, and if you have a team knowing what they want to accelerate before that, it's going to bring a lot of value in accelerating compared to the competition.
Okay, thank you. And Mathieu, what is, from your point of view, the main drivers for adoption for quantum technologies? Is it, do you think that it's coming from governance as well, or is it more the use case scenario?
I mean, first, there is a reaction from Europe after what happened in the US. There is much more private capital available in the US than what you can find in Europe. So when you look at the use cases, when you look at the potential of such technologies, hardware, software, sensing, communicating, and post-quantum crypto, I think European governments realize that they cannot be behind. If you don't master the encryption of your data for military or GDPR or health matters, if you cannot discover drugs as others can do, if you cannot map water from space, if you cannot map minerals, resources onto the moon, you know that you will have an impact in your sovereignty. You will not play the same role as you used to play. So there is a difference in terms of time to approach the market and the source of capital. Then you got some private companies in Europe. Take Medcare. You got some in the US, in Europe. All want to have a quantum computer ready to speed up drug discovery. Because at the end of the day, would it be for sovereignty matters or for financial return of private capital? They want to be first to discover the best drug to cure the deepest disease. So to me, according to the place of the world, it will be financed by different vehicles. But at the end of the day, use cases are similar. And here we talk around material science, biology, logistics optimization. Everybody face, I would say, difficulty on the mainland program. How to organize schedule for trains in a full country. You don't do that with a regular CPU, GPU. You need something different. And it seems as of today that quantum computing is a way to solve those problems that used to be unsolvable. I can take another example. Climate change is something that everybody is, say, not talking anymore, but acting on. And to work on the climate, you need to understand and to monitor what's happening. You can do that thanks to quantum sensing. But when you will have to digest terabytes of data in crazy complex models, you will not do that on the regular CPU, GPU. You will need something which offer a new way of understanding and computing data. And this would come, I guess, from quantum computing. So drivers for adoption to me are not the pain point anymore, is how can we have a solution that will make, I would say, qubits accessible as you can access CPU, GPU through the cloud or on your own device if we manage to make it small enough, I would say cheap enough for a given industry to acquire them. So, I mean, I think it will change a lot of things in terms of, for the good, climate, resources, monitoring, I don't know, a fleet of satellite aircraft, but as well, for the bad, it means that with such crazy technology, you can do things that are not maybe the right things. Example, as we're saying in the world of post-quantum cryptography, if you can break RSA, forget about the safety of your banking system. Forget about the security about your healthcare data transmission. Forget about GDPR, sorry. So for us, as we keep investing in the world of quantum to offer the best to industries or to government, we need to look at the other side of the medal, meaning how can we come up with a scientific or technical solution that will protect things that are not protected anymore with quantum computing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mathieu. I have a question then now to Jan, because you mentioned, Jan, you at Bosch, the interest from Bosch, and I know you are for Robert Bosch Venture Capital, so it's more the investment part. But you mentioned the link with IoT sensors, material development as drivers. But are you, just to switch to the feedback of Mathieu also on that, do you consider it could be a way to address the climate change, the energy consumptions, to reduce energy consumptions, or to optimize it? Is it some drivers you are targeting, considering quantum technologies? Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, it kind of depends on what you're looking at. With QRNG, I'm not sure if you're able to influence climate change. This is more about protection of communication or data. When it comes to quantum computing, essentially what Mathieu said, you know, the big promise is that suddenly a typical class of math problems becomes much more accessible in form of I get to a solution within my lifetime, which is worth something. And this holds true for a couple of things which could also have a climate impact. For example, when it comes to generating fertilizers, this is something that's always held as an example. And yes, when you look into different materials, different phenomena in nature, how photosynthesis is done, maybe with a quantum computer, we will get closer to those things. Having said that, I think as of today, this is still pretty far off. We will not see quantum computers solving those type of equations within the next 3 years. I'd be very surprised. When it comes to sensing, the whole thing is a little bit different. In sensing, it's always about you know, how sensitive are those sensors, and quantum sensors can be much more sensitive, much more accurate. Here, the big question for us is in which cost bracket are you able to achieve this? And the cost bracket basically determines the size of the market. You know, are you able to sell, you know, some hugely expensive pieces of equipment which are vastly better than things that are out there? That's great. The part of the market which drives Bosch more is the mass manufactured type of sensors that you might use in cars, that you might use in mobile phones, and with those things, the cost bracket is entirely different.
Perfect. Okay, no, very clear. And I'm going to ask the same question to Christian. Christian, you explained that you started in investing in quantum technology to address specific challenges. You have identified the quantum as a tool to do it. And according to you right now, what would be the more important market driver? Is it the challenge of health? You mentioned MRI, and we know this company very well now, active in quantum technology to address MRI challenges. Or is it more industrialization, productions? What would be the main market driver you will put the bigger bet on?
Yeah, and as Jan just outlined, it's extremely vertical specific. I mean, at the end of the day, no customer cares about what's under the hood, if this is a quantum solution or not, a more conventional solution, as long as it solves the problem better with better performance or more cheaply or with less resource consumption as compared to the best alternative. So, you know, and even for my 3 quantum investments, the drivers are extremely different from one to the other. But it is really about solving a problem, and this spelling out a realistic promise for the quantum advantage that you're going to provide. So the advantage that the quantum resource you're providing is going to realize over the next 3 to 4 years, I think is absolutely mission critical also to avoid a nuclear winter for the theme if the music of huge financing stops for whatever reasons in the next couple of years. Let's not get caught in enormous promises that we have all made with difficulties of fulfilling them. So one of the things that I'm urging my companies to do is think about the quantum advantage that you're really being able to provide in a finite amount of time, and not in 10 years with a fully error-corrected quantum computing device, probably.
Yeah, so it means also that for all the companies that will apply to join INPHO Venture Summit, introducing their solutions related to quantum technology, the strong advice is to be vertically oriented, to showcase the challenge, but also the quantum value they're going to bring compared to existing solutions. And also maybe a bit about the time frame when the solution could be used. That may be also something important.
Yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. So Philippe, for quantum sensors is a little bit more mature than other markets. And just like Christian just said, we don't care about what is under the hood. So when the people are interested to adopt quantum sensors, so what is their motivation?
Yeah, so I completely concur with what Christian and Jan said. First of all, at the end, we sell a box, and what remains from quantum is just the name and the top of the box, and nobody sees what's inside. And then, of course, it's the performance that you have with, especially a quantum sensor. So that was the first goal, is really to reach the performance. And that actually puts a very high challenge to a company which is trying to develop a quantum sensor, because the expectation from the customer will be actually the quality of the sensitivity, the long-term stability, and that makes the development for the company very hard, and usually the investment also very hard for those type of companies. So now, what our early adopters from Yoquans, of course, they were fascinated to be the first to use a quantum sensor, and that's one of the driver. But they have the level of expectation, which means that at a certain level, you need to have the quality, the quantum performance, together with the ergonomy of a product, which is very simple to use, and all that in a price which corresponds to the market you want to address. And it's very hard to put these 3 challenges. For instance, there were already companies in the US building quantum sensors, but they were not really addressing, or they're not trying to address a customer market. Their customer was mostly the government, and then let's say the price limit is much higher than what a laboratory would accept, or as Jan say, if you want to then integrate them to cars. And Yoquans tried an intermediate way. It's trying to actually shape the product to a price which corresponds to the market we wanted to address. And that's the only way we could actually make people adopt quantum. They would not have paid twice the price, and they would not have accepted half the performance. And the product we're selling, it's mature, but it's mature for a very a rather small market, I would say. And we are not able today to deliver a product for a larger mass market, like for navigation, etc. It's the next challenge, and this will require further development, because we say that for that type of product, you need to maybe you don't need the same performance, or you need to push on some specificity for quantum. In navigation, for instance, it will be the long-term stability. But you want to reduce the size by a factor 10, and you want to reduce the price by a factor 100. And then you have to find whether you can have the trade-off. If you cannot have the trade-off, nobody will adopt the quantum technology. So and that's where the market, the technology, and the scientists, we cannot distinguish between them. It's a global vision that you need to build up in order to make this this choice. I mean, at the end, if you want to fly a plane without GPS, you don't care if it's quantum or not. You just want to be sure that you don't rely on GPS. So if quantum is the good solution, it's our job as engineers to really push it to a way that it can be delivered as a solution.
Thank you. So time is flying. We need to accelerate a bit for the end of for this last question. So what's next? So maybe in one sentence, because it's very important for the companies who are going to apply to the INPHO Venture Summit. So maybe Christian, one sentence. What do you see? What's the next? What should we look at in the quantum world?
One sentence is not a lot.
So you can maybe put some keywords one behind the other.
Quantum realism is my answer.
Quantum realism, that's a good one.
Okay, yeah, that's a good trick, because we want you to elaborate on what kind of realism you want. I mean, maybe that's you mean something that can achieve something in a limited amount of time, right?
So I think it is totally fine to have a long roadmap, and it is totally understandable that things take their time. But what is dangerous is, of course, to promise to people that in a very short time we will have this massive advantage if you only send me another 300 million check. So that's what I mean by quantum realism. Let us try to stay realistic in order not to kill the quantum 2.0 revolution that we all want to benefit from jointly.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. Same question for you, Jean-Gabriel. In one sentence, what's next for you to invest in? What could be your expectations?
Well, I would say that what's next would be the quantum computing industrial advantage, where we can bring a speed up to an industrial use case. And it will be, I believe, if everything keeps the path, it will be sooner than we expect.
Very good. Matthew, your turn, your sentence.
My sentence. I mean, the field of quantum physics is so large, so summing up everything into one sentence sounds to me a bit complicated. I would say that you got the world of challenge. No, yeah, I understand. No, but the world of computing is how to offer things that works for a real use case at scale, with meaning high fidelity. If you look at sensing, it's how to demonstrate that by monitoring currents in the ocean, by understanding what resources are onto the moon, you can have a positive impact, for example, on climate change, because this is the theme important. The last very important point to me is the threat of quantum computing with the future of encryption. And this is not a problem for 2026. It's very much a problem for today, because my bank account, someone steal my data today, will not be confidential in 5 years, I don't care. But the drawing of a nuclear missile will still be confidential in a couple of 3-5 years. So here, we got a real problem today where we don't see that many robust solutions available for the real world. I mean, we've got beautiful mathematical solutions, but to apply them in our real world, it's another stuff.
Yeah,
Very
right.
good.
That's a quantum encryption for you is a very important point, and we don't have to wait for the quantum computer to be able to break the codes. We have to, because you harvest and decrypt later, right?
Correct. Correct.
Jan, what's your take on that question?
Without taking away from what's been said, all very good, and I have the same view. I think that the one word maybe for me is scalability. And this holds true both for the computing, also for the encryption and the sensing side. I think on the computing side, scalability is probably an engineering challenge, because if you can really do a quantum computer that does useful things after we reach supremacy, not only on theoretical math problems, it doesn't matter how much it costs, really. This thing can be hugely expensive, but you need a lot of qubits. That's what we know. So scalability is an issue here. On the sensing and on the encryption side, I think also scalability in form of you need to make it very cheap so people use it. There is alternatives, maybe also just software-based alternatives, especially on the encryption side. So for quantum technologies to dominate here, I think you need to be able to provide a highly scalable, fairly cheap product in what you're doing. Otherwise, you'd be a niche product player.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Philippe, now we talked about realism, we talked about encryption, scalability. What do you think?
Well, let me start with, actually, I will reverse the question. Say, do you think that if you ask that question to the early stage semiconductor industry in the 60s or to the early stage internet industry 20 years ago, they would have told you what the semiconductor industry and the internet industry is actually useful to today? I don't think so. The fact is that I fully agree with the quantum realism and also the scalability. The next step is really to push and to use this boost that we have today to get these quantum technologies as a whole embedded smaller and being able to address a bigger and bigger market. And actually, the market will make the use case for this technology. I'm a strong believer that we went too far for this movement to stop, but it's very hard to know what the flow will lead us to in the near future or later on.
Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, thank you very much, because I think it's very useful information, and maybe we can make, before we make the announcement on INPHO, you have also an announcement to do an equity center.
Yeah, the NACIDIS Center is open for business, so it's a place to partner with. So of course, anyone in the audience who would be interested to work with the NACIDIS Center is welcome to either visit a website, contact Philippe or myself directly.
And it's open to any kind of partner, from the scientist who wants to build a research project to the investor who is looking for potential opportunities even, and that we can actually maybe build up a team around the project that is not yet actually strongly supported.
All right.
Very good. And so we have also next sessions on the same topic, but next to invest in, but that time on semiconductor and photonics. Christian will be with us again on the 19th of May, and we'll have also François Tison from 360 Capital, and we will have also the European Commission introducing the CHIP Act. And as you know, the European Commission would like also to encourage private investment in this field, so they will explain also in more details what are their plans in the collaboration with EIF, the European Investment Fund. And we're also welcoming startups to join and to introduce their solutions, their companies to investors active in this field. And this is exactly the goal of today. You know, the goal was really for you, if you go to the next slide, to better understand what will be the expectation of investors active in quantum technology, what they are looking for. And thank you very much for sharing your expectations, making it small in one sentence. And so all the companies are really welcome to apply to introduce their company. And then we will organize the jury from 15th of July to end of August. And we are all looking forward to meet you in Bordeaux. at INPHO on October the 13th and 14th. What you need also to know is that at Bordeaux, we'll have a lot of interactions. We will have dedicated workshops, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have one about quantum technologies. The goal is really to interact, to meet, and to shape the future all together, and for investors to detect the right company to invest in. So I think you will have more information on infoventure.com. I think we have made it perfectly on time. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Christian, from Matterway Venture. Thank you very much, Matthew Cast, also from Airbus Ventures. Philippe Bouillet from Nakidis. Jean-Gabriel Buonat-Romani from Contonation, and Jan Venster-Hu from Robert Bosch Venture Capital. Don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. We will be happy to answer. And all those great investors will join us at INPHO, so we are all looking forward to meeting you there. Thank you very much for your time, and wish you a very good end of day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the session. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.